Hello, everyone, and welcome back to our virtual Mishnah Berurah share. We're holding in Mishnah Berurah Chelik Daled, and Yirtz Hashem, today we will be learning Daf Reish Lamed Amid Beis. We are picking up today on the very bottom line of the Shulchan Aruch on Reish Lamed Amid Aleph in Siman Shin Samech Vav Sif Gimel, continuing to learn the halachas of Hoitzah and Hilchas Erevin on Shabbos. Our learning today should be a schus for Achenu Kol Beis Yisrael Hanesunim Bat Sarah B'Shivya Ha'imdim Bein Bayam U'Bein Bayabasha Hamakim Yerachim Aleihem V'Yitziei Mitzar L'Rvacha Me'Afela L'Oiro Mishibud L'Geula Hashta B'Galo V'Zman Kariv V'Namar Amen. Our learning should be a schus Refuah Shalema for Meiri V'Rabbi Reb Shalom Ruven Ben Shimon, for Achia Gadol Moshe Ben Esther Fradel, Yitzchak Ben Tzion Ben Dusha, Rivka Bas Shira Leah, Chava Hadassah Bas Rezel Serel, and for Yeshua Levi Ben Ahuva Malkachana. They should all have a Refuah Shalema b'sar Shar Chayil Yisrael. I would also like to add that the learning should be a schus. The Rebbeinu Shalom should watch over Yoel Ben Michal, an IDF soldier, a relative of mine who was on active duty, together with all of the other Chayalim and Chayalot. The Rebbeinu Shalom should watch over them. The Rebbeinu Shalom should watch over every member of Klal Yisrael B'chol Makom Shehem. I would say in these turbulent times, but really in all times. Okay, so let's go weiter. Says the Mechaber Sif Gimel, bottom line, Reish Lamed Amid Aleph. Habayis shemanichim boy ha'eruv. So we're going to make an eruv chatzeros. Everybody in the chutzner, every homeowner in the chutzner, is going to give towards a collection of pas. We're going to see exactly what they give, how they give it, but every member is going to donate towards a collection of pas, and this pas, this bread, is going to be put in one of the batim of the chutzner, one of the homes of the chutzner. And by doing so, it's going to be seen halachically as if everybody lives in that bias in the chutzner, or according to some Rishonim, it's going to incorporate all the residents of the chutzner so that they all live together, wherever it is exactly. Maybe they all live together everywhere, or according to some Rishonim, they all live together in one of the batim of the chutzner. So everybody is going to give towards the pas. But the Mechaber says, Habayis shemanichim bo ha'eruv, the house that the eruv is going to be placed in, ein tzarich litein pas. The homeowners of that home do not have to contribute towards the pas. Let's take a look at the Mishnah Berurah. Says the Mishnah Berurah that this is very, very logical. Ein tzarich litein pas, shaharei eina eruv ela sheyachshev ki'ilu kulon darin sham. After all, the basis of the Eruv Chatzeros is that by virtue of this collection of bread that everybody contributed to, we're establishing that everybody lives in that bias. V'harehu darsham. The owner of that bias does live in that bias. He doesn't have to contribute towards the pas in order to establish that he lives there. He does live there. Everybody else from all the other batim, they don't really live there, so they have to give towards the pas that's going to be in that house, and the person goes after his pas. So now he's considered to be living there. Says the Mechaber weiter, further, Ve'ein tzarich sheyeh be'eruv shava pruta. This collection of pas does not have to be worth a shava pruta. We don't have a minimum value that the eruv has to have. Says the Mishnah Berurah, turning back to Reish Lamed Amid Aleph, the Eis Kat Yutes, Ve'ein tzarich li'ay shava pruta. Says the Mishnah Berurah, the Mechaber is telling us an important chiddush here. La'afuke, this comes to take away from Miman da Amar b'Gemara, the one who says in the Gemara in Erevin that eruv mishum kinyan. There is a shita that holds that when you give the pas to the eruv, it's not just that by giving the pas to the eruv, you're establishing that you live in that house, because you're nigrar achar pitoi, you get dragged wherever your pas is. No, there's a mandiyarma in the Gemara that says that this is actually a kinyan. It's actually an acquisition. If the eruv is going to be put in unit number 15, then by you, who lives in unit number 10, by you giving pas to the person who lives in unit 15, you are acquiring ownership in unit number 15. That's how we establish that you live there. There is such a mandi amar, but we don't paskin that way. So the Mishnah Berurah says that's why the Mechaber is telling you la'afuke mimanda amar b'gemara erev mishum kinyan. This stands in contrast to that mandi amar. Shabalabayis makna lehem beisai avor hapas. That mandi amar holds that the owner of unit 15 is giving you, he's selling to you a kinyan in his unit, and that's how you live there. If we would paskin like that, Mandi Amar, that the Erev is making a kinyan, well, you can't affect a kinyan kesef with something that's worth less than a shava pruta, so then your contribution to the Erev would have to be worth at least a shava pruta, the lichashev mamoin, so it should be considered kesef that could affect the kinyan. Kamash balon, the lav mishum kinyan hu. The Mechab is telling you we don't paskin that way. Erev does not make a kinyan. Elashit of dira ba'almahu. All it is it's a method of establishing that you live in that house by virtue of the fact that your pas is now located there. And for this same reason, gam kein tzarich litein dafka pas. That's also why the Yeruv Chatzeros has to be made out of pas. It has to be made out of bread. V'loi sagi b'davar acher. You can't make an Erev with lakshin kugel. You can't make an Erev with salami, or with even chashav of pastrami. Kigoin keli. You also can't make an Erev using a keli. You can't give a nice vase to Unit 15 and make it your Erev. The kiyotzabay she'ein a meichel, or something that's not food. The ikar diras adam hu bimkaim pitoi, because you go after your pas. I shouldn't have said Laksha Kugel. Laksha Kugel could be a question. We'll see that later on. The truth is, the Mishnah Berurah is focusing on the fact that it has to be a Meichel. We're going to see it has to be Pas. You give Kamach. We'll get to those details later on. But it has to be made with something that you go after your Pas. Kol zeh mispar b'shas. All of this is made clear in the Gemara in Masechtas Erevin. Okay, going weiter, top line, Reish Lamed Amud Beis, says the Mechaber weiter. Ve'ein manichem oisoi b'chotzer. We spoke about this yesterday. When you set up the Yeruv Chatzeros, so you have all the houses, right? We'll go back to our bungalow colony with 21 units. You have your 21 units in the bungalow colony, and then you have the chotzer. You're going to make the Yeruv Chatzeros. You can't take a waterproof box and put the pas of the Yeruv Chatzeros somewhere in the chotzer. No, the Erev has to go in one of the homes in the chotzer. It has to go into a bias in the chotzer, and that bias has to be a real bona fide bias. It has to be a bias that's roy ledira, a bias that somebody could really live in. And the Mechaber gives us some examples of what would not meet the bar of being a bias that's roy ledira. La'afuke base shar. You can't put the Erev in a gatehouse. Imagine you come nowadays to one of these gated communities, right? You have all of these retirement communities, let's say, that are cropping up all over Lakewood. So you come to the community, and this first is a gatehouse. So let's say to go into the chotzer, you're making a Yeruv Chatzeros in this chotzer. At the entrance of the chotzer, there's a little gatehouse. Now, the gatehouse is kind of like a small little house. That's why it's called a gatehouse. Says the Mechaber, you cannot place the Erev inside a Beis Shar. You can't put it in a gatehouse. You also can't put it in an achsadra. What's an achsadra? An achsadra, Rashi says, is a portico. Imagine a little gazebo. You have posts holding up a roof. Now, you might think that an achsadra is also a shtickle like a bias. It's a shelter, it's a portico, it's got a roof and everything else. You can't put the Yeruv Chatzeros in a portico. Mirpeset. You can't put the Yeruv Chatzeros in a mirpeset. A mirpeset, literally a porch. What kind of mirpeset are we talking about? It's a little bit of a machlokes rishonim. We'll see the Shitas Harambam for the Pirush Mishnayos Harambam. We'll see in the Mishnah Berurah. But a mirpeset is a porch. You can't put the Yeruv Chatzeros in any of these kind of binyanim, any of these kinds of structures. Let's take a look at the Mishnah Berurah. Says the Mishnah Berurah, La'afuke Beis Shar, you can't put it in a gatehouse, in an achsadra, a portico, a merpeset, a porch. Says the Mishnah Berurah, Da'afagav she'asuyin ke'ein botim, even though all of these structures are sort of like miniature houses, mikamakam hoyel v'hen drisas haregel l'chol b'nei hachotzer, all the people of the chotzer are traipsing through these structures. Everybody who comes into the chotzer goes through the Beis Shar. If at the opening of the chotzer there's an achsadra, a portico, everybody goes through the portico. If there's a mirpeset, if there's a porch, which is how you get access to the upper story of buildings, I always kind of vision this. Used to see this a lot, at least, by motels. Imagine you have a motel that has 2 floors. Very often, the upper rooms of the motel, each room has a door that goes to the outside. On the second story, the doors of the individual rooms open onto a long porch. So if you have 10 rooms on the upper story of the motel, everyone who has a room in one of those rooms, they exit their room onto the mirpeset, onto the porch, and from the mirpeset, they take a staircase going down to the courtyard, going down to the chotzer. So the mirpeset also is a makom drisas haregel l'chol b'nei hachotzer. All the people who live in the upper story of the buildings in the chotzer, they're constantly going through the mirpeset. And therefore, all of these places are not roy l'dira. They're not roy l'dira because they're mokum hiluch harabim. The people of all the people of the chotzer are constantly going back and forth in there. So they're not roy l'dira. Since they're not roy l'dira, you can't put the Yeruvah Chatzeris there. And again, the underpinning of this halacha is that the Yeruvah Chatzeris has to be in a dira. Because what the Yeruvah Chatzeris is saying is, we all live in the dira that the Yeruvah Chatzeris is in. So it has to be in a dira. These do not rate as diros. Says the Mishnah Berurah, Oiskan Chafalef, mirpeset. What exactly is this mirpeset? So I gave you one understanding of the mirpeset. The understanding I gave you of the mirpeset is basically based on Rashi, also Tosfos. Now the Mishnah Berurah is going to reach out to the Pirush Mishnayos LaHarambam. He's going to give us an explanation of the mirpeset based on the Rambam. I think the reason the Mishnah Berurah chose to go after the Pirush Mishnayos LaHarambam is because there's even a bigger chiddush in the halacha of the mirpeset, according to the Rambam. Let's see what the Mishnah Berurah says. Makom gavoya b'chotzer. This is a raised area in the chotzer. Okay, second story of a building. Ubay madregos, and there are steps to go up to this mirpeset. So far, it's basically the same as what I described to you. Ubay madregos oilim behem la'aliyos. There are steps going up to the mirpeset, and that's how you get to the aliyos. That's how you get to the rooms or the diras on the second story of the buildings in the chotzer. V'zeh hamakom gavoya, and here's where the chiddush comes. V'zeh hamakom gavoya, this raised mirpeset, mukaf bebinyan, is surrounded with built walls. It's surrounded by a structure, v'darin boy, and sometimes people would live in it. So if you think about this for a moment, right? And again, I'm going to reach out to bungalow colonies. Very often, in bungalow colonies, you have a bungalow, and the bungalow has a porch. And Kenai Nahara, the family gets big. The bungalow only has 2 bedrooms, and they need another bedroom. So sometimes what they do is they enclose the porch. It's upstate, the weather is nice. You can even throw in an air conditioner. They enclose the porch, and they make a room out of the porch. This mirpeset, says the Rambam in the Pirush Mishnayos Rambam, it's not only a mirpeset, it's not only a porch. It's a porch that actually has walls. So you go up the steps from the chotzer, you go into this mirpeset. The mirpeset is a long mirpeset, and it serves all of the diras of the second story. But it's also surrounded by walls. Somebody could take a mattress, put a mattress down on the floor, or even a bed, and a little nightstand, and make a little dira there. Somebody who needs a place to sleep, he can sleep there. So according to the Pirush Mishnayos Rambam, this mirpeset is more of a dira. It comes closer to being a dira than a beis shar, than an achsadra. People actually sometimes would live there. Still in all, it doesn't make the bar of being a beis dira in the context of the halachas of Yeruvah Chatzeros. Why? Because first, people constantly are traipsing through it. And therefore, it is not a chashava enough dira for you to be able to put the Yeruvah Chatzeros there. Says the Mechaber, weiter, second line, V'tzarech sheyehei bei arba amos al arba amos. The base dira that you're going to put the Yeruvah Chatzeros in has a minimum size. It has to be 4 by 4 amos, not tvachim. Dalet amos al dalet amos, it has to be. Says the Mishnah Berurah Chaf Beis, arba amos al arba amos. Da'oz hu roy l'dira. If it's dalet al dalet, it's roy l'dira. If it's smaller than 4 amos by 4 amos, sorry Charlie, it's not roy l'dira. 4 amos by 4 amos, 7 feet by 7 feet, it's a small bedroom, very small bedroom. But at least that's roy l'dira. Says the Mishnah Berurah, V'imu rachav yoser me arba elishu katza ba'arkai. Let's say it equals the area of the dirla equals 8 square amas, but it's not 4 by 4, right? It's 4. I'm sorry, not 8 square amas, 16. 4 amas by 4 amas is 16 square amas. So let's say this little dirula equals 16 square amas, but it's not 4 by 4. It's 2 by 8. So it's long and narrow. Is that okay for the Yeruva Chatzeros? If in Murachav Yosef Arba Amis Elishu Katza Ba'arkai V'yesh Bei L'Rabeya Arba Al Arba, it has the square amas. It's 16 square amas, but it's long and narrow. Yesh Deis Ben HaPoiskim Imikri Dira. Then the Poiskim argue, they dispute whether or not this could be considered a dira. If you look at the Dirshu Mishnah Berurah in a footnote, they bring down from the Chazon Ish that the Chazon Ish paskin that no, it has to be at least daled al daled. Lefikach, therefore, says the Mishnah Berurah, it would be proper lahanyach lechatchila b'bayis acher yoser gadol. If you do have a 2 by 8 or something like that, Mishnah Berurah says no, don't use it. Better use a bigger house, a bigger room. Vayin biur halacha, but the biur halacha goes into different details of this halacha, different sizes, different scenarios. Ayin sham v'timtza nachas. Says the Mechaber weiter, middle of the second line. Va'afilu hu shel katan. You could put the Yeruva Chatzeros in a home, in the Chatzer, even if that home happens to belong to a cotton. It belongs to a minor. You could still use that home for the Yeruva Chatzeros. And the Mishnah Berurah is going to tell us that the chiddush of this halacha is similar to the chiddush that we had earlier. Says the Mishnah Berurah, Kalachav Gimel, Va'afil hu shel katan, Pirish, Sha'abayis shemanicha b'ya erev, hu shel katan. You could put the Yeruva Chatzeros into a house that belongs to a katan. V'kamash balan, the Mechaber is teaching me, the loy tema de tzarch lahaknois lehem beisai, v'katan lav baraknuyehu. You might say, again, maybe the way Yeruva Chatzeros works is you give your contribution to the Erev, and in return for that contribution, the homeowner of the unit that has the Erev is giving you, he's selling you rights in his unit, and that's why you live there. If that was true, then you wouldn't be allowed to put the Yeruva Chatzeros in a bias of a cotton, because a cotton doesn't have das to be makneh. He can't be makneh, a chelik in his dira to you. He doesn't have das. So if that was the underpinning of a Yeruva Chatzeros, you wouldn't be allowed to put it in the bayis shel cotton. Kamash balon deloy mishum kinyan he. Again, a Yeruva Chatzeros has nothing to do with kinyanim, ela mishum dira. You're just establishing that you live there by the location of your pas. Valkein mutalon yachafilu bebeis cotton. I don't care if the owner is a cotton. The bottom line, my pas is there. If my pas is there, that is where I live. Says the Mechaber weiter. Very interesting halacha. Near the end of the second line, Reish Lamed Amud Beis, says the Mechaber, V'em regilim litnai tamid bebayis yadua. Let's say for 10 years, they've been putting the Yeruva Chatzeros in Ruvain's house. Every year, on Erev Pesach, the minig is to make a Yeruva Chatzeros Pesach time. So every year, they make a new Yeruva Chatzeros, and they put it in Ruvain's home for the last 10 years. In regilim litnai tamid bebayis yadua, ein lehem l'shanoisai v'litnai bebayis acher. You cannot go ahead and change it and decide this year we're putting the Yeruva Chatzeros in Yehuda's home. We're not keeping it by Reuven anymore. Now we're putting it by Yehuda. Why, says the Mechaber? Mipnei darkei shalom. You're not allowed to do this because of darkei shalom. Says the Mishnah Berurah, Ois Katan Chav Daled. Regilim litnai tamid. If they've always been in the habit of putting the Yeruva Chatzeros in one person's home, la'fukeim lo'hurgulu adayin lo zeh abayis. This halacha doesn't apply if it's not already a hergel. It's not already that they've been doing this for a long time. If for 1 year they put it in Reuven's house, next year they could change it. We're talking about where for years they've been putting it in one house. Then ein lahakbid and mishan l'bayis acher. If it was done once, that's not called regilim. That's not called that they're in the habit of keeping it in that house. No, they did it one time. This halacha only applies if this is already regilim. They've been keeping it in that house for a long time. They're not allowed to change it. This is true, even if there's a little bit of a reason why they don't want to keep it in that house anymore. You have to have a really good reason why you don't want to put it in that house anymore. Even if you have a reason, but it's not such a good reason, you're not allowed to change. You have to leave it in the house that it's always been in. Now, we haven't yet seen the reason why. We're going to see that shortly. You're not allowed to change it, put it in a different house. Says the Mishnah Berurah, this is true. Let's say, for 10 years, you've been keeping it in Reuven's house. Now Reuven died. So you want to put it in a different house. Nope, you can't change it. Let's say for 10 years you're keeping it in Reuven's house. Now Shimon comes along. Shimon says, I want the Yeruva Chatzeris in my house, and I'll give $180 to the shul. I want the Yeruva Chatzeris to be in my house. Nope, you can't change it. Let's say for years you've been keeping it in Reuven's house, and Reuven is an Amoritz. He's a nice guy, but he's an Amoritz. Now Reb Shimon Shlita comes along, and Reb Shimon, the big Talmid Chacham, the Poisik, he comes along and he says, I would like the Yeruva Chatzeris to be in my house. Nope, you keep it by Reuven Amoritz. Says the Mishnah Berurah weiter, in Betchilas Anesina Hisnu L'Shano Ispot. If the first time they went ahead and they made the Yeruva Chatzeris and they put it in Reuven's house, they told Reuven up front, listen, we're putting the Erev in your house, but we're not establishing a chazak over here. We're maintaining the right to move the Yeruva Chatzeris around. If you do that up front, then mutar l'shanois, then you're allowed to change it. But there are achronim who disagree with that psak. Now, up to this point, we didn't see what the problem is of changing the Erev from one house to another. We saw the Mechaber said, B'nei Darkei Shalom. What does this have to do with Darkei Shalom? Why does anybody care if it used to be Reuven's house and now you move it to Shimon's house? Explains the Mishnah Berurah's Katan Chav Zayin. B'nei Darkei Shalom. Says the Chavetz Chaim, Inyan Darkei Shalom Bekan. What is the Darkei Shalom that we're worried about here? Mishum Chshad. Chavetz Chaim brings down from a Gemara in Gittin Samacham and Beis that this is because of chshad, because of suspicion. What's the suspicion? Machlokes Rishonim. Upirish Rashi says over there in Masechtas Gittin, Hayil v'hurgala erev b'soich oisei abayis. Since for years the Yeruva Chatzeris has been in Reuven's house. So that means people come into Reuven's house, and when they come into Reuven's house, they see the box of matzahs on top of the Svarim Shrank. And what is that box of matzahs? Oh, that's the Erev. Okay, so for years, people are used to coming into Reuven's house and seeing the Yeruva Chatzeros. In Basel, Lashana, he says, if now you make a new Yeruva Chatzeros and you don't put it by Reuven, you put it by Shimon, people who come into Reuven's house and the box of matzahs isn't there, the Yeruva Chatzeros isn't there, they're going to be choshed that there is no Erev. For years, I'm coming into Reuven's house. I always see the Yeruva Chatzeros. Now I come into Reuven's house. No Erev. People are still carrying. Oh, my goodness. These people aren't chazering Dirshu Mishnah Berurah. They're all carrying without the Yeruva Chatzeros. And that is going to cause machlokes and meriva. Somebody's going to come to shul, and somebody's going to say, would you believe it? I was just in Reuven's house. There's no Yeruva Chatzeros. Everybody's carrying without the Yeruva Chatzeros. Another guy's going to turn around and say, what are you, crazy? You really choshed me that I'm carrying without the Yeruva Chatzeros? There's an Erev. The Erev is not in Reuven's house anymore. It's in Levi's house. Oh, come on. Really? I came and I told you I don't see an Erev in Reuven's house, so you're telling me that it's in Levi's house. You just made it up. It's going to start machlokes and meriva. It is interesting how somehow Erev is... Erev very often, for some strange reason, seems to be a source of strife. Here we have that we're choshed. We can't move the Erev, because if we move the Erev, it's going to cause machlokes. But Taisus Pershu, Taisus says a little different. Taisus says the cheshadahu. What's the cheshad? Sheyichoshtu labalabayizeh shegoynev pas mina erev. The cheshad is someone's going to come to Reuven's house, look up, and say, "Where's the Yeruva Chatzeris? For years I've been seeing the Yeruva Chatzeris up there." Reuven's going to say, "I don't know. The Rav came to me this year. He doesn't want to put the erev in my house. He put the erev in Shimon's house." Someone's going to say, if the Rav decided not to put the Erev by Reuven, must be a good reason. Maybe Reuven's been stealing from the Erev. It came Shal Shuda's time. He didn't have Lechem Mishnah, so he dipped into the Erev and he took out 2 matzahs, from the Erev. Maybe he did it 5 times during the year and the Rav came, there's no Erev left. So the Rav decided, I can't leave the Erev by Reuven. He's a Nechshad. He's Choshud for stealing from the Erev. Maybe that's why they put it in Shimon's house. So you're going to be choshed the homeowner that the Erev used to be by. You're going to be choshed that he's been stealing from the Erev, and that's why they put it in a different house. Now, says the Chofetz Chaim, there is a nafkamina lahalacha between Rashi's pshat in the chshad and Tosfos' pshat in the chshad. Well, the Pirish Rashi, according to Rashi, that the Gemara means you're going to be choshed that there is no Eruv Chatzeros. Well, the Pirish Rashi, bevada yesh lahachmir, you have to be machmir and you can't move the Erev. Afilo machar bayis la'acher shaloi l'shanes makom Erev. According to Rashi, that pshat is, you're going to walk into Reuven's house. The Reuven Chatzeros has been in Reuven's house for 10 years. You walk into Reuven's house, there's no box of matzah. You're going to be choshish that they didn't make it in Reuven Chatzeros. Well, in that case, if Reuven sells the house to Shmerel, then you still shouldn't move it. Because still, somebody might come into Shmerel's house. No Erev. For 10 years, there's been an Erev over here. No more Erev. Reuven left. No more Erev. I guess people are carrying we're not in Reuven Chatzeros. Achein lepirush HaTosfos ef shaloymar dalal lekech lo yavel lidechshada yidei tzas Erev b'beisai. According to Tosfos, the problem is that if for 10 years it's been in Reuven's house and now they took it out of Reuven's house, you're going to be choshed Reuven. But if for 10 years it was in Reuven's house and now Reuven sold the house to Shimon, and now you moved the Erev, so what, they're going to be choshed that Shimon is a thief? How could they be choshed that Shimon was a thief? The Erev was never by Shimon. For the last 10 years, the Erev has been by Reuven. Now Reuven moved. Now, for the first time, they were going to put it by Shimon. Okay, they decided not to. They put it by Levi. That doesn't mean that you're going to be choshed that Shimon is a thief. He never had an opportunity to steal. How can you be choshed that he's a thief? Says the Mishnah Berurah, but you should know, this halacha is only germane if we're talking about a situation where nobody is getting paid to host the Erev in their house, where they were keeping the Erev in a house and they weren't paying the homeowner. But if the tzibur is paying a homeowner to have the Erev, they're going to Reuven, we would like to keep the Erev in your house, we'll give you $18. We'll give you $18 for providing us the service of having the Erev in your house. In that case, and then you could switch it to somebody else. Even if you have to give money to the second guy. In other words, it's not just pshat that you're saving money. You hear what the Mishnah Berurah is saying? The Mishnah Berurah is saying this halakha is only applicable if you're not paying somebody to host the Erev. If you're paying somebody to host the Erev, then you could move it. Now you might think, oh, pshat is, if I find somebody cheaper, Reuven was charging $36 to host the Erev. Shimon's willing to do it for $18. So then we can move it to Shimon. Says the Mishnah Berurah, no. Even if you're going to pay Shimon more, you still are allowed to move the Erev. Why? So the Mefarshim say very simple. Maybe the reason they were giving it to Reuven is because they knew Reuven needed the money. So they were giving it to Reuven as a method of giving Reuven a few dollars. Now they found out that Shimon is a nitzrach. Shimon needs the money. So now they want to give money to Shimon. So now they're giving it to Shimon. So once the tzibur is paying money, that takes away from the chshad. People aren't going to say, oh, there's no Eruv Chatzeros. They're going to say, no, there's an Eruv Chatzeros. They must have found somebody else who needs the money more. Or according to Tosfos, they're not going to say Reuven was stealing. No, they're going to say they moved it to Shimon because Shimon needed the money more. Says the Mishnah Berurah, B'chol Gavna, in any case, Im of Reuven Nasnu B'bayis Acher, if the Gaboim did something wrong and they moved the Eruv Chatzeros when they weren't supposed to, you're not mechuyev to go fix the problem. In other words, you were over on this halacha. You took the Eruv Chatzeros out of Reuven's house, you put it in Shimon's house. Are you mechuyev to go correct the situation and put it back? No, you're not. But if the Gabbai wants to switch it back, he can. The Mishnah Berurah says, halacha l'maisa, this is a little bit more of a thorny issue. He sends you to the Magen Avram and the Knesset Agdola, and you can see a little bit more about this in Sheretz Tzion Ois Katan Chaf Beis. Okay, we still have time. Let's go weiter. Says the Mechaber, the last word on Rish Lamed Amud Beis, Va'afilu katan yachal ligboisa eruv ulekabtzoi. when you make the Yeruva Chatzeros, somebody has to go around the Chatzer, somebody has to knock on all the doors and say, hi, we're putting together a new Yeruva Chatzeros. Could you please give us some pas to the Yeruva Chatzeros? Hi, we're putting together the Yeruva Chatzeros. Could you please give some pas to the Yeruva Chatzeros? Does it have to be a gadol that does it? Says the Mechaber, no. Even a katan, a minor child, could be the one who goes around collecting the pas for the Erev. Not only could he be the one who collects the pas, he could also be the one who takes all of the pas contributions and puts them together into the keli to make the Yeruva Chatzeros. In other words, when the cotton goes around to collect the pas, he doesn't necessarily go around with the Yeruva Chatzeros box and have everybody put their pas into the box, and then at the end, you have a box with all of the Yeruva Chatzeros pas. Maybe the cotton goes to unit number 18, knocks on the door. Do you have some pas for the Yeruva Chatzeros? He gives it to him. The cotton brings it home, puts it down on the kitchen table. Then he goes to unit 14. He gets a piece of pas. Now, after all the pas is collected, somebody has to take it, put it all together in a keli. Right? Says the Mechaber, cotton could do both. He could go around doing the collecting. He could also do the assembling. He could put it all together in a box to make the actual Yeruva Chatzeros. Says the Mishnah Berurah cotton chavches, va'afilu cotton, va'kol mitamanal. The reason for this is something that we've already discussed several times. She'enoi mishum kinyan, she'yei tzarich bardas lahaknois. The cotton's not doing anything. There are no kinyanim happening over here, right? The only thing that's happening is everybody's giving a contribution of pas to the Yeruva Chatzeros. The Yeruva Chatzeros is being put in unit number 15, and because it's located in unit 15, everybody is said to live in unit 15. But there's no kinyanim taking place. There's no chalois that anybody has to make. There's no din that anybody has to trigger over here. The cotton's not doing anything. Even though the maisa of a cotton doesn't have any chashivas to it, we don't need the cotton to do anything. It's just a fact. It's a metzias. The box of pas is in unit 15. Fine. Everybody lives in unit 15. However, you should not use an Eino Yehudi to put together the Yeruva Chatzeros. Why? The Choshed Lignoiv Ulahachlif Toiv Bara. Because an Eino Yehudi is nechshad. You don't trust the Eino Yehudi. The Eino Yehudi might steal the pas. So, for example, let's say the Eino Yehudi goes and he knocks on unit number 15, and Ruvain gives a matzah to the Yeruva Chatzeros. Well, when Tony is going from unit 11 to unit 12, he might eat Ruvain's matzah, and it'll never get into the Yeruva Chatzeros. So now, it's interesting. The Magen Avraham says to halacha that you can't use an Eino Yehudi because he's nechshad. Comes along the Machzah Shekel, and the Machzah Shekel says the Magen Avraham didn't give any explanation. The Magen Avraham just says you can't have an Eino Yehudi make the Yeruva Chatzeros because he's choshed. He's choshed to steal from the Yeruva Chatzeros. So what? Asks the Machzah Shekel, even if he steals, l'chayre, it doesn't matter. Why? Because let's play this out. Let's say again, we have our bungalow colony with 21 units. The Tony goes ahead to all 21 units, and he collects a matzah from every unit. So now he has 21 matzahs. Now he goes ahead, and he decides, time for lunch. He eats 10 matzahs. So you had 21, and now you only have 11, because Tony ate 10. Okay, does that matter? No, it doesn't matter. You know why? Because the person who actually makes the Yeruva Chatzeros, the first thing he's going to do is he's going to take all 11 matzahs, he's going to hand it to somebody else, and he's going to ask that person to be zoicha in all 11 matzahs in the name of everybody who lives in the bungalow colony. What does that mean? What that means is, once you have the collection, somebody takes the collection of matzahs, gives it to somebody, that person receives the whole Yeruva Chatzeros as a shliach in the name of all the residents of the bungalow colony. So now all of those 11 matzahs belongs to everybody in the bungalow colony. So even if Ruvain, who lives in unit 11, Tony ate his matzah, and now his matzah is gone, it doesn't matter. Because when the Yeruva Chatzeros is actually made, Ruvain is going to receive a portion he's going to have ownership of a portion of the holy Ruva Chatzeros because somebody received it on his behalf. Somebody was zoiche in it on his behalf. So the Machzor Shekel asks, I don't understand. So what's the problem? Tony might eat from it. So the Machzor Shekel has different answers. One answer that he gives is maybe when Reuven from Unit 11 gave his matzah, his das was not to contribute to the Erev so that the goy should eat it. And now maybe he doesn't want to have a chelik in the Ruva Chatzeros somehow. Whatever it is, others say maybe he'll eat so much of the Ruva Chatzeros that you won't have enough left to make it a Ruva Chatzeros. Okay, it needs a little bit more hesber. Okay, let's see how long we are so far. You know what? I think we'll go a little bit further. No, you know what? We'll stop over here because the Ramah over here is a new topic, and it's a very fascinating Ramah. Okay, we'll give you a little break today. Thank you so much for joining me for Limud HaTorah, discussing Limud HaTorah should be making against Klal Yisrael, the Rebbeinu Shalom should send Yeshua's for first Padas, Shidduchim to all those in need. We should be zeicher to see the B'Yisrael Tzedek B'Meher V'Yameinu. Amen. Be well.